So this is my next image, and this is in Tuscany, and this is the view from the village where I base my Villages of Tuscany workshop. And by the way, we still have 1 or 2 spots open if anybody wants an excuse to have a great time in Tuscany. But you only see this view if you get up before dawn, and that's when I shot this, before the sun actually came up. I've shot this valley several times over the years, and it helps to go often to get just the right mist and light. And in this case, I wanted to communicate the feel of dawn with this villa and the village in the background even too, just waking up. You know, the lights are on, things are just coming to life, and this villa just feels nice and warm in this cool mist very early in the morning. These are working farms, and some of them are agriturismos, so people are generally up early, and I just like that really warm feel of the villa floating in the cool mist. I'll show you the one that I started with, and that's here. So this is the raw capture out of the camera, and the challenge here is to maintain that feel. So aside from the raw is blah syndrome that we have in this, it's going to require some selective adjustments to communicate that feel and still help it look natural. So because what we want to do is that it looks really flat right now. There isn't a lot of life to it, so to speak, and certainly not the way it looked if you were standing there. And there's a lot of texture in these farm fields, and I want to bring that back. However, we're probably going to need to do more of that in the background because the mist is just kind of a blanket here, and there's really a lot of texture and detail in there to be had, and you'll see that when I go into this. So what I'm going to do to isolate that is use Remask, which is an awesome program, and it's definitely my go-to for masking. So I'm going to start in Photoshop, and there's my layer, and I'll make a copy of it. And right now, let's see, I think I'll just label this Remask for now. Actually, what we'll probably do is this is going to be, we'll end up going into clarity. So let's see. But this is where the mask will appear, and we'll first work on the field part. But what I'm going to do is, it doesn't really matter what I labeled it here. I just have a layer selected. I'm going to go into Remask. So Topaz Labs under the filter menu, and then go down to Remask. So as you can see, if you haven't seen this before, Remask looks totally different from the other plugins, and the reason for that is we're not doing any adjustments to an image. All we're doing is masking. And the concept is actually just is simple. The way it operates is deceivingly simple because this program does amazing masking, and it defies its apparent simplicity. So basically, you see there's this overall green cast. Green is for keep, red is for cut. So, and then the blue is what they call the compute brush. So that's the transition. And when I'm basically, these are navigation controls. These are the brushes, and these are fills, and I'll show you what those do in just a minute. So what I like to do is I go to the little magnify tool here. I like to work at 1:1 when I'm masking so I can be more precise, and I'm just moving it with the little navigation thing. Here I'm going to go back to the overall so you can see. Basically, we have a pretty obvious line here for the foreground right along here, if you can see that little blue crosshair going across the screen. And so we're gonna use that as our masking line. And I'm gonna adjust my brush size here. So the idea here is you want a brush size that's going to get on both sides of your line, just big enough to do that, and also give yourself a little leeway for doing this. And actually, I'm going to switch to my Wacom tablet because I find the masking is easier to do with a stylus. Now, you can just trace along here, but if you have you can use a shortcut too. If you have a straight line portion here like this, you can just go to your next spot, hold the Shift key down, and click, and it goes a lot faster if you have some straight line portions here. I'm just going to freehand it. Here's another nice straight line portion on top of the bushes here, and basically I just want to make sure that I keep the blue, which is the compute brush, the transition brush, over all of my transitions, like the trees here. And I'll go around these bushes. And actually I could, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that those are transitions, so make sure they're all covered in blue. And I think if you haven't seen this before, I think you're going to be pretty amazed at what a great mask this does, because there's a lot of detail stuff where, you know, branches of trees and a lot of fine stuff that if you tried to do this mask in anything else, like Photoshop, it would be very time consuming and a lot harder to do. So I'm going to go back to my overall view, make sure I have a complete line. So now this is where I'm going to use these fills. These are like a bucket tool. So red is what we want to get rid of, and the green is the keep. And it really doesn't matter because we're going to use this mask both ways. So I'm just going to cut out the mist for now and leave the foreground, and then I just say compute over here, and it's going to create a mask. Now, I like to use the split view just to examine the mask and see if I need any touch-up. So I'm going to do that. That's the upper right here. You can actually do 4 views if you want. I usually just use the split view. Now, they look the same, but you can choose what you want to do with each view. So on the right-hand side, I'll say keep, so it's showing the part we're keeping. It has that annoying checkerboard pattern in the background that you see in Photoshop. If in the lower left here, you notice I just clicked on this thing that says solid color. Topaz allows you to do, a remask allows you to do a background color. You can do whatever color you want. If I want a different color, I can select one in here. Oops. So the yellow is fine, and I'm going to go back up to 100% so I can take a look at this. And you can see how nice that mask turned out with all these trees and branches, and you know, these are kind of translucent, and it kept all that. And it's really easy to tweak the mask too. Now in this case we're just dealing with mist, so it isn't that critical, but you notice that on the left some more tools appeared. So a couple ways we could do this. We could take the edge hardness, move that up, and you'll notice where it was sort of gray in here before it got whiter. Here, I'll go back to the way it was. And you can see that if you use the color side, there's a little yellow spilling into there. So I can just harden the edge of that mask. Another way is to use this magic brush. So I can click on the keep brush, and it's kind of like shrink wrapping. You just touch the edge of it with the brush, and it kind of shrink wraps right to the edge. So this is a great way to just touch up this mask exactly how you want it. We got a little bit on the house here, and you know, basically the mask is perfect almost right out of the chute here. So I'm just going to say okay, and now we've got our mask in here. So remember, black conceals, white reveals. So now we've got this set up so we can work just on the field. I'm going to go into clarity. So in clarity, I'll hit the reset. It looks like we're at our neutral tone here. Now I talked about presets before. If there are things that you do on a regular basis, I encourage you to make a preset out of it so you can reuse those. And whoops. And what I'm going to do here is I have it on my collection, so these are all presets that I've made. And I have these dehaze ones because I just run into that with landscapes. And just to give you an idea, and I'll show you what it's doing when I do it. So I'll click on the normal, and you can see right away that brought back a lot of detail in the foreground. In fact, I think that looks great. We'll actually need a little more on the background. So you can see I can click on the heavy, and that's way overkill. Actually, the mist looks okay, but probably a little overdone. And then in between, I have the plus, and that would probably be good for the mist. But for the foreground, what I call dehaze landscape normal, if you look over on the right, what it actually is pretty simple. It's bringing the micro and low contrast sliders up about 1/3 of the way, and then down below it's bringing up the black levels so we don't lose shadow detail, and it's bringing down the white level a little bit. But in general, this is looking pretty good. Let me enlarge it so you can see it a little better. Whoops, I'm in the wrong one. There we go. So at 1:1 here, it takes a little while for it to come up here. I'll move it up so you can see the foreground. So now we're getting the detail and some texture and a sense of depth back in there. So there's my before. It's kind of flat looking, and there's the after. We've got that depth, and I'm going to say OK and bring that back into Photoshop. And if I magnify this a little bit, I can uncheck that layer. There's the before, and you see because of the mask, it's only affecting the foreground. So when I do the after, this background remains unchanged. So now I'm going to duplicate my background layer again, and now we're going to work on the background, on the mist. So we're going to go right back into Clarity to do this because that's the best tool for it. But now we're going to work on the mist where we need a little more clarity adjustment than we had on the field. So, and I'll show you how we're going to deal with the mask. Actually, we can do that right now. I'll take this mask. You can do Option Drag. So you click on the mask with the Option key held down, Alt on a PC, drag it right down to that layer. Now we have the same mask there. And I know you're asking, well, we don't want the same mask. So I'm going to select that mask and just do Command or on a PC Control-I for invert, and instantly that inverts the mask. So now we can use this very same mask. We don't have to redo all our work. It's all there. So I'm going to go to, I need to select my image first. Then I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz Labs, Clarity, and we'll jump right back into Clarity. I'm going to reset it. This time I'm going to go for a little more adjustment. So, and remember, visually, like when you're looking at this, you want to mentally ignore that foreground. What we're looking at right here is for the mist. And I'm going to magnify that a little bit so you can see it. And you can see there's the before, and the after. You can see there's actually a lot of sort of layering and texturing and subtle detail in that mist. And all the heavier one does versus the one we had before is that third slider, the medium contrast. I brought that up a little. Now, you'll notice that in my preset I have the white level to a negative, and the reason I do that is with a normal daylight exposure, you're going to start to lose highlight detail and shadow detail. So that's why I boost the blacks and bring down the whites. But in this case, we don't have any extremes, and if you look at the histogram, in fact, we have a pretty compressed tonal range there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the blacks back down, and remember, we're just looking at the mist, and that's making this look a little better. And I'm actually going to go the other way with the whites because I want to boost that background up a little bit. And I'm even going to lighten the thing overall by a little bit by using the midtones. And again, remember, we're just, it's a little bit much. I'm just typing in numbers, which you can do is another way to do it. So now we've got, there's the before, there's the after, and now I think the mist and the background are looking good where they're going to balance nicely with everything else. And I'm going to, well, I don't know what happened there. I somehow lost it. Let's see. All right, let's try that again. Now we should have our same settings in there from before. And in fact, we don't. So I will just redo it here very quickly. And we wanted to bring up our midtones to lighten it overall for the mist. Black level down, white level up. And say, okay, it's possible I hit the cancel by mistake. So there we are. If I click on that eyeball, there's the before for the mist, the before and after for the field. And the only thing I have left to do that I want to do is bring up this villa a little bit. And what I can do is jump right back into remask. And what I'm going to do is just, I'll go up to 200% here so we can see a little bit, because the villa is pretty small in this image. And I'll bring my brush size down a little bit. All I'm going to do here is just outline the villa, because what happened is we lost that kind of nice warm glow that I saw when I was originally there. So we're just going to outline the villa here, say compute mask. Oops, I have to do my keep and cut. Compute my mask, and I can use my little magic shrink wrap brush here just to touch it up, say okay. And what I'm going to do is just make a levels layer here and use the mask from that. I really don't need this extra image. That just sort of takes up room in the file. And so once I'm in levels here, then I can go in, for instance, into the blue, and I can just adjust out the, take some of that blue out of the villa, and let me enlarge that so you can see it. So I just kind of come in here, that takes out a lot of the blue right there. It's looking a little greenish, so I can, or cyanish, so I can go into the red, and I can adjust the red level as well, bring that up so it just looks a little warmer. And then I can go to the overall, the RGB, and just lighten it up a little bit by moving my slider this way. Excuse me. Now I know what you're thinking is that that's overdone, and this is the same concept as before when I kind of overdid it. I can adjust the opacity on here, so I'm just going to bring the opacity down to maybe 50%. So, and so there we are. We've got our final image. I'll jump back into Lightroom here so we can do a compare. So that's our before image that we're looking at, and there's our after, and there we are. Voila.